Today's conversation explores a membership direct care model in psychiatry, a model that isn't part of how I currently practice. You'll hear me ask some tough questions and receive some tough answers. That's what this podcast is really about, real conversations, even when we don't agree. I hope this episode helps you think critically about what mental health care can look like and what kind of care you deserve. Hello and welcome to our next episode of How Are You Really podcast. Today's episode is Beyond the Waiting Room, the Future of Membership-Based Care. I am your host, Dr. Fariel Malik. I'm a child, adolescent, and adult forensic psychiatrist, and I am very pleased to introduce our guest speaker today, Dr. Melvina Bisonette. She is a board-certified psychiatrist and founder of Hojo Psychiatry and Wellness. She specializes in integrative psychiatric care, addressing mental health challenges related to perimenopause, perinatal periods, trauma, ADHD, anxiety, depression, and more. With a focus on holistic, direct access care, she integrates psychiatry, psychotherapy, and mind-body wellness strategies to help people reclaim balance, harmony, and beauty in their life. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Dr. Bisonette, I would love to start by asking what membership-based direct care is, because I don't think even doctors understand what this model is. So I would love to know what exactly membership-based care means.
Yeah, so in a basic sense, membership-based care means you're paying a monthly membership fee for direct access to that physician. What sets this apart from concierge care is that we're really not utilizing insurance for care. And so when a patient enters a patient care relationship with a physician, they agree to the membership price. And part of what that membership price gets you is one, direct access to the care. So again, there's like no middleman. So not just insurance, but one of the things I offer people is like, here's my cell number. Here's my email. If something comes up, text me, email me, or you can use like the EHR portal if needed. And I think in a lot of like big practices, big clinical practices or hospital-based practices, you don't have that, right? So if something comes up and you're trying to reach your clinician, you are sending like a my chart message, and it could be 2 or 3 days before someone even responds, and whoever responds is probably unlikely going to be the physician who responds. And I would say more than half the time people are met with like, please schedule an appointment to discuss further. And so then you can start to understand the frustrations with that system, especially if maybe you're just looking for a med refill or potentially just, going up a little bit on a medication. It can be frustrating. And so then you schedule an appointment or you call the schedule and you're told that like, hey, this person's booking out 6 to 8 weeks, and you're just kind of left with that. Part of me has experienced these frustrations in my own care, but also seeing my husband experience these frustrations with his care, it just kind of got the wheels spinning that I think, this could be done differently. And so, I have a friend who was telling me about her direct primary care practice that she was enrolled in. I remember when I was thinking of coming up with my own practice, my sister-in-law, she has a fee basis or, cash only pelvic floor PT practice. And she was like, oh, like have people pay packages or pay for packages of care. And it's like, wait, I don't think that works. Like, how would you do that in psychiatry, right? You're like packages, like how would that work? Like, would you do like intake and then here's the number of follow-ups you pay for? So it didn't really make sense, but those things got my wheels spinning. And then with time, I started learning about direct primary care practice, and I came across the I think Dr. Kazan's podcast, like direct primary care, and I started listening to that and really liked the model. And that was essentially the model of direct primary care is you pay a monthly membership fee, you have direct access to your clinician, and it's just you and the clinician working together. And you're not in direct primary care. Generally, there's not a cap on how many appointments you could have like within a certain time frame. It's just you need something, your doctor is there, you can connect with them and get the care you need and have timely care too. Some of them incorporate lab work into their practices, or they work with like Quest or LabCorp and kind of contracting and or negotiating lower cost labs so people can pay out of pocket for them.
Yeah.
Anyway, I heard all of this and I really liked this, and it was like, how can this be done in psychiatry? So months after reading direct primary care books, reading, listening to this podcast, there was a night where it like finally clicked, and I was like, oh my gosh, I think I know how I can make this work. Because part of what I wanted to do too in my practice is I just didn't want to focus on, medication management and therapy, but eventually I want to get to the place where I'm incorporating like strength training, because I think strength training is such a huge component of, our overall wellness, not only for mental health reasons, but just physical reasons. Another part of this too is I wanted to figure out like how can I eventually like form a community, because I think people really want community and people feel a lack of community.
Absolutely.
And so it just kept kind of butting up on this. Well, like, how do you bill for that, right? Like, how do you bill for that if you're using insurance? And it's like you can't bill for a lot of those things, or you can charge extra for them, but that just didn't really seem, it didn't meet that like holistic part I was thinking about. Like, if you're using insurance and then you're trying to like put a membership fee on top of that for these services, it just didn't like sit well with me. So, yeah, learning all of this stuff made me realize, like, oh, I think there's a way you can do this with psychiatry. Like, you can do membership-based care. And so really just kind of figured I'm going to try this. I'm going to see how this goes. I opened my practice in December, so I'm entering my 5th month, and I'm gaining patients. And the patients I'm gaining like seem to understand it and they seem to appreciate it. So it's given me more confidence that I'm like, I really think this can work.
Yeah. Yeah, I had heard about like membership care, but I didn't have a full understanding of it. So, is there a certain number of appointments per month that they would get? And if they needed an extra visit, do they pay extra? How does that work?
Yeah, so typically they pay when I meet with people and I'm discussing, do you understand the membership structure? They pay $750 for the first month. And so what I tell them is that that gives us up to 2 hours of our first appointment time. So, traditionally most practices, I mean, the more stringent ones, it may be 45, 35 minutes to meet a person for the first time. More ones that have more luxury, you're like, oh, I get an hour to meet my first patient. And some other ones, it's like, I get 90 minutes. And so you tell people, we get 2 hours, up to 2 hours to kind of really get to know each other, kind of really figure out what's going on, to just give you that time. Do you have to take that whole time? No. Like, if we're done in 45 minutes, we're done in 45 minutes, but I'm giving you 2 hours. And so this is your time and we can make it what we want. And then I usually tell them, like, let's say, for example, we start medications and, you're having side effects and you send me a text message and I'm like, this is a little bit too much to go back and forth via text. Like, can you meet with me for 15 minutes, 30 minutes, like in a day or two? I'm not charging you extra for that. It's just something I'm putting on, and we're going to have that appointment, and you're not going to be billed for that. Kind of harkening back to why I like this membership model is a lot of private practices are going the way of like, we bill your insurance or we give you super bills, but then, I charge like X amount of dollars for every increment of time that I'm either having to like respond to messages outside of appointments, or I'm charging you to write letters, or, anything like that. And I just don't like that. So I often tell them too, like in this practice, like that is all included. So if you message me and let's say something's happened and we're like, I think you need, some time off from work, I'm not going to charge you $50 just to write that letter. That's part of what you pay for when you enter this practice. I let people choose from two models. One is what I call like path one, which is maybe more intense, more like psychotherapy heavy. And so we have the ability to meet like 2 hours per month. Typically how that ends up working out is like 1 hour every 2 weeks. And I think with that one, it's probably easier to describe it as more like therapy focused. So, we have specific goals we're really wanting to work on. Path two, still psychotherapy like involved, but maybe more of the traditional kind of like med-based pathway where they still get an hour per month. Let's say we started a medication, I'm going to see you in the traditional 4 or 5 weeks from now, that it's kind of following that model. And then what I tell people is like, once we reach a level of stability or we feel like things are going pretty well, you don't need to see me as frequently, the payment model decreases. And that's probably where I kind of align more with the direct primary care, where it's a lower monthly fee. And then with that, it's like, we meet 1 hour every 3 months, and that's like your reserve time. But again, anything comes up between appointments, they have access to me, they can connect with me. If we need to do 15-30 minutes of a quick like, check-in to kind of make some adjustments, I'm not charging more for that.
Okay. Yeah. All right. That's most people understand that and they're willing to do it. I guess the next question is, I know you said that you want to eventually incorporate wellness stuff and strength-based training. Have you already incorporated it, or is that something in the works?
Not yet. It's something in the works. I think probably the biggest limiting factor is finding space, finding
Mhm.
affordable space too.
Mhm.
In Minneapolis, real estate is I mean, probably not as much as like Miami, but I mean, it's pretty pricey. And so, and and these find spaces that seem reasonable, and they to me don't seem like, a great like central location. So biggest limiting factor is finding like ideal space. But once I find that, I already have a fitness instructor that, I use personally, that I told her like, hey, let's do this together. And so she's really excited to do this. And so over these past couple of months, like we, go back and forth about, I heard this space, did you see that was up for lease? Or, I reached out to them, they didn't get back to me, or they reached out to me and they told me, for 1,000 square feet, it's 4,000 a month. And we're like, oh, that's a bit too much right now to take on. And so I think once we're able to find that space, we'll be able to incorporate that more. But we've also talked about, potentially maybe starting out by just offering like standing virtual classes that people could do like strength training from home. So we're still trying to flesh that part out. I think ideally we'd like to have an in-person component for that too, because again, like I said, I think that fosters more of that sense of community and people really wanting that feeling of community.
Right, yeah. And so your private practice, the membership-based practice, you're seeing patients in person right now for it,
I
or
offer
is it all
both.
tele?
Yep.
Okay.
So in Minnesota, I have in-person available. I also provide telemedicine to several other states, and so those ones, of course, have to be all virtual. But for my people in Minneapolis area, surrounding suburbs, like they have the ability to meet me in person.
So what are the challenges that you faced when you were starting it? What was just for other doctors if they are interested? Because I know I've seen this question in our Facebook groups come up and stuff. That's how I knew about it. Otherwise, I wouldn't have. But, new psychiatrists that are getting out or considering it, or somebody switching, from one type of practice to another. So what are the biggest challenges that you faced initially?
I think that, well, kind of start with like internal challenges, right? On doing that framework of believing that insurance-based care is the only way to deliver psychiatric care. So I think that's one of the big hurdles of realizing, or just this fee for service. Like there's different ways that this can be done. And then trying to just like unlock that in your brain of like, it has to be this way. Because right, going through residency med school, especially too within like the past 20 years, that's kind of what we're taught. And the other thing I think, I don't know if this is true in other, I know I've talked to many physicians, and on the coast, it sounds like starting your own solo practice is very common, especially when you're in your last years of residency or even fellowship. Not so much in the Midwest. I know personally, kind of going through residency, it seems like our only options were like established big clinic hospital-based systems. And so you kind of don't really, and you don't get the framework for how do you start your own practice. And so I think, that being the first internal challenge is like kind of challenging those assertions of like, this can't be done, or I have to follow these models that other people have already been doing because that's the only way to be successful. I mean, and then really just not knowing how to do it, right? Because no one teaches us how to do this. We hear of people doing it, but then no one really tells us like how this can be done. And I think your question was other challenges were trying to explain this to people. And I would say my biggest critics were other physicians who were just
Wow.
like, that's never going to work. Like, I don't know how you would make that work. And then the other part, coming from physicians is, especially when they hear about like, oh, they have your cell phone number, because in psychiatry, I think we're taught that like everybody is going to just somehow, it's just blurring of boundaries and relationships. But I don't think it's really, I think it can strengthen that relationship you have with the patient and ultimately probably lead to them doing better. But then the other thing was like, oh, you're going to be on call all the time. That means you're never off call. What are you going to do when you want to go on vacation? It's like, well, you take your computer with you. You tell your patients, I'm going to be out this week and let's address things before I go, or if something small comes up, it's not a big deal. I guess personally, I don't think it's a big deal. The other part is, if they have your cell phone number, they're going to be calling you at all times of the night, all times of the day. Has not been true so far. My patients have been really respectful of kind of keeping it to that work week, or understanding, and I have this conversation with them, like, you have my number, if something comes up, definitely reach out to me, but understand, it's after 7 o'clock at night and it's not urgent. I'm probably not going to respond until the next day. Or, if you are having an emergency or you're feeling, you're going to harm yourself or others, like, please go to the emergency department. Like, don't try calling me first. Like, you need to go to the emergency department if that comes up. And so far, I mean, those things have not posed a problem, right? And then I often tell people, and if they do, and if people keep pushing that, boundary, in direct primary care, do this too. You might eventually have to tell a patient, look, I don't think this is working for us because, here are the parameters of contact me, you're pushing that, and, this isn't going to work anymore. And so there's freedom and flexibility to not have to be locked in with someone forever.
Okay. And so when you do offer this membership, is it a 1 year commitment? How does that work? Because like for instance, somebody's coming and I'm fee for service based private practice. I don't take insurance either. But for me, if somebody comes and does an evaluation and they don't feel comfortable at that point, if they let me know, then that's fine. They can go to a different psychiatrist. But how does that work? Is that the same, or do they have to commit for a certain time? Or
Nope, I don't have any commitment. I mean, I've had some people already where we've met like for like, just once, and maybe I felt like, this is too much of a commitment right now, or too much of a financial commitment right now. I'm not ready, and it's, and I'll, just pay them for like, charge for the one-time visit, and then definitely have that conversation with them too, that like, I get it. You have to factor in all sorts of things, and some people are really rooted to in that insurance-based system and really want, I want someone who accepts insurance, and like, why not, right? You pay for it. But then we can always argue too, if what you pay for insurance is what you're going to get back to. And so just kind of be prepared for that. But no, I don't lock anybody in. So what I have in my contract is just, at any point in time, if you want to end, just give me 30 days notice. And then two, what I have that conversation with people, right, is when we're talking about, we're at a place where you reach stability, you're really doing well. We can either, drop down to the lowest tier of the membership fee, or, if you want to turn your care back over to your primary care, like I'm pretty open with that. So no one should feel like locked in with me. So it's just like, I'm here, let's work together, let's get you feeling better, and then I want you to have the freedom to go elsewhere if you need to.
so I want to hear like success stories or testimonials from your patients if you have any. How are they feeling about like what is the feedback that you're getting from your patients?
Oh gosh, I mean, I haven't elicited for testimonials yet, but some of the feedback I've gotten is just like in the ability to access me and to know that they can reach out and ask me a question, and it's not going to take a couple of days to hear a response. I would say probably the most, I don't know if it really counts as feedback, but most people who've sought me out, I've kind of heard the reason why when we're doing that 15-minute discovery call, and it's been like, I was seeing somebody, my insurance changed, they didn't accept that insurance, and I had to find a whole new doctor. And I just want somebody who I'm going to be able to work with for a longer term where insurance isn't going to impact that. Or I've had a psychiatrist, and they were just so hard to get into. They were just so hard to see. And anytime I called, I never really got any kind of response back from them. And so I think the people that I am getting into my practice are those who have either kind of been burned by the system already, if that's not too strong to say, or those who are just wanting to have somebody that they know is going to be there and it's going to be consistent.
Okay. How do you think that this is going to affect like the accessibility and quality of healthcare?
I mean, I think that can be one, my accessibility is great. If someone reaches out to me, like, we have a discovery call on, Wednesday night, I park down on them a little bit because with, kind of having this maybe be more like considered a micro practice at this time. I don't want to have too many people where I'm struggling to fit them in. But, you meet with me Wednesday night, it's very likely that in 1 to 2 weeks, like you can get an appointment. And so there's not a long wait time. Whereas, you call up kind of any kind of general psych clinic, you might 3 months to 6 month wait before you get that initial appointment. And so with me, typically within 1 to 2 weeks, I can see you. The other ways I think it helps with access is personally, I'm pretty flexible. I've kind of made a commitment too for, if someone's really struggling, or especially if it's a physician struggling and reaching out, if meeting on a Thursday night, is the only time we can meet, then I'm going to make it happen. Or if it's a Sunday at 9 o'clock, I'll make that happen. And so, but that's just the way, like, I personally want to run my practice, is not being so confined to that, like, nope, I'm only Monday through Friday, 9 to 3 o'clock, and then I'm done. And it's like, because I understand too, as, a physician and a mother, it's hard to get time off from work. And so if I can make that a little bit easier for my patients, then I'm going to do that. And as a side going into this too, like, had a discussion with my husband that, like, if I'm going to do this, you have to understand you're going to take on the brunt of like childcare for a while. And he's like, nope, I support you. I want you to do this. And I totally understand that. And so just having a really supportive, understanding partner, I think really helps with that. But that's aside from access issues. I think having practices like this can help get people in. But I was going to say the argument probably against that is like, but you're cash based. Not everyone can afford cash based. Like, not everyone can afford a membership model. And like, I understand. And, and on that point, it's not for everybody.
It changes the patient demographic.
Yeah. But there's flexibility in that too. When you are your own practice owner, if you see someone really struggling, you can decide to charge them a different amount. So I'm not having to go up to an administrator and say like, hey, can you not bill this person? Those decisions are mine to make if I want to offer something a little less or, helping someone come up with a different payment plan. I think those are things that the nice things about being my own practice owner is I get to make those decisions. And then the second part to that was you said,
Just the quality of how does it improve?
oh yeah,
We've kind
I
of touched on that, but yeah.
Yeah, no, and I think it can improve quality of care, right? Because when people are meeting me, we're not rushed. I'm not looking at the time being like, all right, we only have 20 minutes here. I have 3 people scheduled for this hour because of some entity pushing that down on me, RVU based, like I got to meet those RVU metrics. So it's more relaxed. It gives people time to sit down. And like I tell people, this hour is yours, but I'm not going to hold you hostage and make you sit here for the whole hour. Because some people do that also too, right? Like you've probably had those people so well, 5 minute check in and you're done, but then you're like, I can't bill for this. I need to like make them talk or be here longer so I can justify billing them, at a higher billing code. With this, it's you have that hour. Let's make it what you want out of it. I want you to feel like you're getting what you want out of this hour. But so they're not feeling rushed. They can take as much time or as little time as they want. And again, I think having that direct access to me increases quality because something comes up between appointments. They can reach out to me. We're not, waiting 4 weeks and having things get worse and then seeing me, when something could have been addressed a couple of weeks ago. I'm able to do that rather than making them wait until an appointment, which you see in a lot of these other systems. And then the other thing too is, like med refills, someone can message me and be like, hey, I'm out of my Adderall. Like, I can be like, all right, pull it up on my phone, enter it, send it to the pharmacy. And this is where I talk about my husband, just seeing him kind of struggle with, he was in a regular clinic system. And I mean, you can go without your Adderall, but it's not going to kill you. Just seeing him struggle messaging his primary care, hey, can I get a refill? I'm almost out. It taking almost a week to get back to him. And so going, a couple of days without medications, or again, being told like you need an appointment before she'll give you more refills, but appointments are 5 weeks out. And then I think the one thing I saw him once he waited for that appointment, again, without medication, and then she had to cancel that day. And then rather than saying, I'm going to refill it and I'm going to get you in soon, it was like, oh, the next availability is another 6 weeks out. And so it's like, what are you supposed to do in those situations? And I think having those things in mind is when I created my practice. It was like, I want to try to eliminate as much of that as possible. I don't want people to feel like they are having to fight for their health care, or especially their mental health care. I want them to feel like it's something that they can essentially easily access.
Okay, yeah. So I'm going to ask a challenging question. So, like I said, my private practice is also not insurance based and it's fee for service. However, my patients also have direct access to me. They have a number that they can text and they can email. They can also text, call, email my assistant. So yes, we have availability to do that. And as my practice gets busier, they know to give me 24 to 48 hours. Sometimes I'm not going to be able to right away get back to them, right? But they have direct access to me. Now, depending on whether I'm doing a form while I'm seeing them in the appointment, or if it's a form completely outside of an appointment, that's what determines like the fee for forms and stuff. And then again, like you said, if it's something that needs an appointment versus, okay, I can quickly answer this question. Like I will sometimes just do like a quick check-in if I started a new medicine and I'm following them up. Like in 2 weeks, I will, at the 1 week mark, just send a text, any side effects, just to kind of check in. So if like I have this model that I'm doing this with the fee for service, how will that differ from membership based then if my patients also have direct care
Yeah,
access
I
to me?
think no, yeah, I've heard people like mention that, and I think for right now, I could probably say like what you're offering and what I'm offering, there's maybe not much differences other than me knowing that when I do my stuff, I'm not having to enter like billing codes.
Hmm.
And then I'm having the, ability to kind of not have to think around like, all right, like I'm going to make this a 99214 appointment and I'm going to add on my therapy code and get billed for 30 minutes, knowing that I'm going to get the money that I'm going to get. But you said it's a fee basis, so they're paying you and you're giving them like a super bill. But I think eventually, so I think right now it's probably a little bit hard for me to make that argument about like, how is this different other than probably knowing that, from a revenue clinic perspective, right? Like payments are going to be guaranteed like each month. So that's probably the benefits now are more from the business aspect of it, especially if we're just looking at the direct access part care. The other thing I was thinking though is that eventually when I am able to start adding on those additional services, I think that's where it's really going to have the divide, is that you're going to get these additional services as part of your psychiatric care without having to pay more than that monthly fee you're already paying.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And so with the monthly fee, then you're saying that it's kind of guaranteed coming in. Have patients, I know your practice is kind of new, but have patients done it to where, oh, can I skip this month because I don't really need you and I'll pay you the following month. Is that like a possibility, or at that point you draw a boundary or a line?
No, I think they understand. They understand that, again, it is membership, and so they're paying a monthly membership fee. But right, if they're getting to that point where they're like, I don't think I need to see you every month, that's when we get to the point where I'm like, all right, we can either two options. If you want to talk to your primary care and see if your primary care wants to take over med management, you're more than welcome to do that, and I will help facilitate that. Or we drop down to the lowest monthly member fee, where I'm still here if you need me, but we don't have to meet, and we only need to meet every 3 months. So again, like from a business perspective, like you're saying, like, how does that differ? I mean, when you are accepting fee basis, you are wanting to have a continuous number of patients, right, coming into your clinic because you need to get paid. Whereas if someone's a membership based too, it alleviates some worry for me knowing that there's going to be that kind of income coming in too from it. So then I don't have to, I mean, because I would just, some of the negative connotations I've heard is like out of fee for basis, like they just want to see me back again because then they get paid, and then some patients will feel like my clinician is only seeing me back because they want to get their payment, because if you don't see them you don't get paid. And then on the other part too, it's like, well, if you only have X number of patients and someone's not wanting to be seen for like 4 months, you're only getting paid that time and then 4 months later, where I think this helps to keep things a little bit more consistent. And so again, there's not that push for me to feel like I have to have a panel of 300 people, because I can work with a panel of like 50 and still have like a steady income.
So
So I think a lot of the differences right now between membership based and fee for service is just that I think, especially if you're offering like a lot of direct access care, I think having a membership model, I think at this point is more beneficial from a business perspective and from like a personal perspective, right? Because knowing that I'm going into this and I'm offering this as part of that membership model too, I think helps me not to feel like I'm just thinking of people who do that, right? Eventually, and we see mummers of this like on groups too. It's like, how do I bill for someone calling in, like these persons calling in, how do I recruit money for that? Like I feel like this is taking a lot of my time, like how do I charge for that? And I think when you have a membership based model, you're kind of like mentally preparing yourself that this is part of it. So I think when you have a fee for service model, sometimes you can start growing some resentment, right? With that coming up too much, like this person is contacting me too much between appointments. I'm starting to feel like this is free care and I don't want to give that, and because I need to make money and they should just schedule an appointment. So I think from a personal perspective, it helps me not become like resentful in my care, or it helps to alleviate some of that because I already have this
mhm,
mindset of like, this is what I'm offering, this is part of the membership that I'm giving you.
mhm.
And then like I said, and from a billing perspective, right, too, I'm not feeling pushed to have to schedule someone in every 4 to 6 weeks. That it's, if it's something though too that comes up where someone is like, yeah, I don't need to be seen for 6 months, it might be like, more than happy to keep working with you, but maybe this is not the level of care you need anymore too.
Okay. So, what do you think how like membership-based direct care is going to evolve over the next 5 to 10 years?
I feel like I'm seeing a growing trend more towards it, especially as I think physicians and probably even patients too are getting fed up with insurance-based systems, especially as insurance has grown more stringent over what they're going to cover. People paying high premiums for insurance and then being told that you still need referrals or, you can't see certain people. I just feel like there's, yeah, just this growing dissatisfaction with insurance and from a clinician and a patient side. So I can imagine that membership-based care, is going to continue to grow. And also from the clinician side too, right? You see all these articles too, so much about like burnout, people just feeling burnt out. Like, I'm in this big system. I'm just this cog in this wheel. I don't really have any control. They're telling me, especially primary care, I need to see 15, 20 people a day. It's just unsustainable. And so I think when people again undo that framework of like this can't work and they see like this can work, they realize it offers a path to really having control and practicing medicine probably the way you envisioned it when you went into med school of like really putting the patient at the center.
And what do you think how technology will evolve in this, right? Because the other states that you're offering membership-based model, and how is telehealth and technology going to play a role in membership-based care?
Yeah, I think the nice thing too is like what we're hearing right a lot is like Medicaid, Medicare is potentially doing away with telehealth care. And again, kind of going back to that when you're utilizing the services and you're billing for them, you're kind of really held hostage to what their terms are. But when you're using membership-based care and someone is paying you directly, you really get to make that care what you want it to be. You don't have to worry about like, oh, they're going to cut Medicare access to televisits. Like when someone's paying you for that, you can still have a telehealth visit, right? So one of the things I worry about too, and maybe mental health care is going to be overly potentially exempt from a lot of these changes. And, that's the privilege we may have as psychiatrists. You know, an insurance group at any time could say, you're not covering telehealth visits anymore, right? So that super bill you're generating, it's not going to be helpful to the patient anymore because their insurance decided that, we're not reimbursing for this anymore. So it's either in-person visits or no reimbursement. So they'll still pay you, the patient, but then they're going to be upset because now they're not, if they're using those super bills, they're not going to get anything back from it because their insurance company may decide that we don't want to pay for telehealth visits anymore.
Okay. And so when a psychiatrist or any other doctor or practitioner wants to transfer over to membership-based care, are there any insurance or regulatory things that they want to be aware of before considering this, or like any rules that they need to follow,
Yeah.
anything like that?
I think the biggest, I mean, if you're going to membership-based care, my understanding is, you want to give your patient panel like a good couple of months to understand it and have them potentially seek other care if they feel like this isn't something they can do. But I'm just thinking of a lot of direct primary care practices have seemed to have a seamless transition from going from insurance-based care over to membership model care. And you may lose some people, and I think that's understandable. But for the most part, people who really like working with you will understand the model and will want to continue care with you. But every state's a little bit different though when it comes to Medicaid and Medicare. And I know a lot of places will either opt out of Medicare or Medicaid. I believe though in Minnesota, someone can be a recipient of Medicare, but there's a form where they can sign like this waiver saying that I'm okay not having, this X whatever care charged to Medicare. So I think that's like a loophole around it. But I know too some practices will just go, I don't see people over age like 62, or I don't see anybody who, receives Medicaid just because there could be. My understanding is that if someone has those and they pay cash, like Medicare, Medicaid can come back and be like, nope, like you have to like bill and use our system.
Okay. And so that's something that needs to be looked at. I think that's just any cash-based practice, right? Or
Yeah.
private pay practice that they
Yep.
have to look at that. Okay.
Yeah, and I
And
know
so,
each state varies different. Some states I don't think they let you have any waivers, so then people will completely opt out. Whereas I think Minnesota, you're allowed to um, still be opted in, especially if you work for other entities. But I think if they sign that form saying that, I'm waiving my rights to have this charge to Medicaid, that like I think it works out. I haven't done a lot of looking into that myself, but that's just my understanding from talking to other clinicians in the area.
I know that Florida Medicaid doesn't allow it. I'm licensed in a couple other states, but I haven't looked into it. But I have basically decided not to take any Medicaid because I'm not opted out. With Medicare as well, from my understanding, it's a federal based program. So anywhere all over the country, if they want to use their like if their primary is Medicare, you have to bill Medicare or be opted out. I don't think the waiver counts as anything. I think this discussion has come up a few times. So you can't do a waiver with Medicare. If somebody has Medicare, they have Medicare. Now, if they're coming through workers' comp or something, then workers' comp is primary. Then Medicare doesn't matter. But in the case of have Medicare, you have to bill Medicare. So, anyways, coming to you've talked a little bit about this that like your experience and your personal experience and your husband's experience kind of like shape like you choosing this model. And then like you're gonna incorporate like some holistic services. What inspired you to bring that in and just create this membership-based care?
Yeah, I think what inspired me is really the things I like, I want to give to others.
Hmm.
The things that I have felt that have really made me feel like basically feeling like I have that balance in my life and that harmony, like I want to offer it to people. Though that's probably at its most base form is like I enjoy these things. I have found them to be really helpful in maintaining my own like mental balance, and I want to give them to others because I think they can be really helpful. And then the second part of that is, of course, like getting older, you are more aware of different changes, and so it's, after you reach age 40, your muscle mass starts, your bone density starts decreasing, and it's like, oh wow, like strength training is really important as you get older. I think more people should strength train, not just for like the mental health benefits that it can offer, but then also the physical benefits it can offer. And then the other part of that is like probably my own personal cravings for a community is like I want to have a community of people and I want people to feel that community. One of the things I think of a lot of times, especially with a lot of people I see over the years, I've always had this thought of like, man, if I could like prescribe you friends, I think you would be a whole lot better. And so just kind of always keeping those things in mind, it's like, how could I give that to people? How could I offer those things to people? And that's why I think it always came back to like this membership-based care that under this model, I could give that to people eventually.
So, what is the most important takeaway you want, listeners to have about this membership-based direct care?
I think, from a clinician standpoint, like look into it. Like I don't be afraid by what you don't know. And I know that's easier said than done, but really do some time to think about and look at it and maybe just don't like quickly dismiss it because people are doing these things and they're working and some of the worries we have, they don't come to fruition. And I think, that's just part of being in these systems where we kind of get tunnel vision and we don't see beyond that. Try to keep an open mind to them. And then I think for, patients seeking care, if you are dissatisfied with your insurance-based care and you don't like how it's going or you want something more, know that there are people out there offering different models of care now.
That's great advice. I know one of my colleagues has said that to me before that why don't you offer membership-based care? It's much simpler than what you're doing. And I was like, that's true. Yeah.
I think in a way, yeah, it is simpler. But then I'm also thinking, if a lot of your patients are child molested patients and you think of like, oh, if I could give this to these kids, like how could I do this, right? And again, I think with children too, like getting them to care about their bodies and doing like, fitness stuff or just like, hey, we're gonna do like Sundays are yoga days. You can come into the, clinic and do yoga. I just think the possibilities are almost kind of limitless with what you can offer when you're using a membership-based model of care, when you're not held to the confines of like, what can I bill for insurance? Or, you want people to feel like it just simplifies things too, being able to have someone just pay a monthly fee without having to come up with all these like different fee schedules. What do I charge for this thing and what do I charge for this other thing? Or it's like you just pay this fee and this is what you get.
Well, thank you so much for joining, and hopefully we can have you back and talk more about how your practice is going, maybe another 6 months or
Yeah,
so.
6 months or a year. I'm hoping to find a space, and like I said, that's the biggest thing I'm looking for. And I think once I have that, like I can really, really make this practice what I really wanted to make it when I started out. But you have to start somewhere, and sometimes you don't have all the building blocks when you start, but you just got to start.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much. In today's episode, I got so deep into the conversation that I forgot to ask my signature question. So I will actually ask you guys instead, how are you really?
If this episode spoke to you, share it with someone who might need it too. You can follow us on YouTube and follow our story on Instagram to keep updated. And that way you don't miss the next one. And hey, I'd love to hear what resonated with you. Leave a comment or send a message. Until next time, take care of yourself. And I will ask again, how are you really?